It was a routine red-eye flight. 227 passengers, 12 crew, 1 Boeing 777. Destination: Beijing. The last words anyone ever heard from that cockpit were perfectly calm.
All right, good night.
And just like that, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 vanished. No distress call, no explosion detected, no wreckage for over a year. Just 239 people, and a plane the size of a building. Gone. What followed would become the greatest aviation mystery in modern history. And 10 years later, we still don't have all the answers. This is the story of MH370. It's the early hours of Saturday, March 8, 2014. Kuala Lumpur International Airport, Malaysia. Flight MH370 was a completely ordinary scheduled service operated by Malaysia Airlines, the country's national carrier. The aircraft was a Boeing 777-200ER, one of the safest, most reliable commercial jets ever built. It had logged thousands of flight hours without incident. At the controls were 2 experienced pilots, Captain Zaharia Ahmad Shah, 53 years old, a veteran with over 18,000 hours of flight experience, and First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid, 27, a rising career pilot. The passengers were mostly Chinese nationals heading home or visiting family in Beijing. There were also Malaysians, Australians, Indonesians, and citizens from 13 other countries, ordinary people with ordinary plans. At 12:41 a.m., the Boeing 777 pushed back from the gate and took off into the dark Malaysian sky. The flight was expected to land in Beijing at 6:30 a.m., a routine 5.5-hour journey. For the first 40 minutes, everything was completely normal. At 1:07 a.m., the aircraft sent its last automated position report through a system called ACARS, the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. Think of it like a plane's text messaging service. It automatically sends updates about speed, altitude, and technical status back to ground control. And then it went silent. At 1:19 a.m., First Officer Fariq calmly signed off from Malaysian Air Traffic Control, the final human voice anyone would ever hear from the cockpit. All right, good night. At 1:21 a.m., just as MH370 should have been checking in with Vietnamese air traffic control. Its transponder switched off. Now, here's what that means educationally. A transponder is a device on every commercial plane that broadcasts its identity, speed, and location to civilian radar towers on the ground. When it goes off, the plane effectively becomes invisible to commercial air traffic control. This is not a system that fails on its own. It has to be deliberately switched off from inside the cockpit. Controllers in Kuala Lumpur noticed MH370 had disappeared from their screens. They tried to reach Vietnamese controllers to pass on the flight. Vietnam confirmed MH370 never entered their airspace. The plane had turned. Malaysian military radar, which uses a different technology that doesn't rely on the transponder, continued to track an aircraft heading west, back across the Malay Peninsula and into the Strait of Malacca. It was flying at normal altitude, normal speed, no mayday, no emergency signal, just turning around in silence. By 2:15 a.m., even military radar lost track of MH370. 239 people were now somewhere in the dark, with no one knowing where. Now, here's where the story gets extraordinary, and where science would play a critical role. Unknown to most people, MH370 had been quietly communicating with space this whole time. A British company called Inmarsat operates a network of geostationary satellites. Satellites that hover in fixed positions over Earth to provide communication services to aircraft. MH370 was equipped with a satellite data unit that automatically pinged Inmarsat's satellite approximately once every hour. These pings carried no real data, no GPS coordinates, no messages, but they proved one crucial thing: the plane was still flying. Investigators recorded 7 of these pings after MH370 disappeared, the last one at 8:11 a.m., nearly 7 hours after takeoff. Using a technique called Doppler analysis, measuring subtle changes in the frequency of the signal based on whether the aircraft was moving toward or away from the satellite, Inmarsat's engineers performed an extraordinary feat of detective work. They determined that MH370 had taken a southern route, flying out over the vast remote southern Indian Ocean before presumably running out of fuel and crashing into the sea. The final ping drew an arc across the map. Somewhere along that arc, the plane met its end. What followed was the most expensive search in aviation history. The governments of Malaysia, Australia, and China pooled resources and launched a massive deep-sea search across one of the most remote and hostile stretches of ocean on Earth. The southern Indian Ocean, with depths up to 4,000 meters, is thousands of kilometers from the nearest coastline. For months, ships swept the surface. Underwater robots scanned the ocean floor. Nothing. Then, on July 29, 2015, a break. A debris hunter on Réunion Island, a small French territory off the coast of Madagascar, found a large white panel washed up on a beach. It was a flaperon, a movable surface from the wing of a Boeing 777. Serial number analysis confirmed it. It came from 9-HMURO, the registration number of MH370. Over the following years, more than 30 pieces of debris were found along the coastlines of Africa and Indian Ocean islands, all consistent with a Boeing 777, most confirmed or suspected to be from MH370. But the main fuselage, the black boxes, the answers, remain on the ocean floor, unfound. Now, the question that has haunted investigators, families, and the world. Why? The official Malaysian government report, released in 2018, concluded that the disappearance was the result of deliberate action by an unknown person or persons. The systems were not switched off by accident or mechanical failure, but beyond that, no definitive answer. Several theories have been seriously considered. Theory 1. Pilot action. Investigators discovered that Captain Zahari had a home flight simulator that had been used to plot routes into the southern Indian Ocean, though this was never conclusively proven to be evidence of premeditation. Theory 2. Hijacking. 2 passengers boarded using stolen passports, a fact that briefly raised terrorism fears, but Interpol and investigators found no credible links to terrorism. Theory 3. Catastrophic depressurization. Some experts theorize a fire or structural failure could have incapacitated the crew, leaving the plane flying on autopilot until fuel ran out, a so-called ghost flight. None of these theories has been confirmed with hard evidence. In January 2017, the tripartite search by Malaysia, Australia, and China was officially suspended after covering 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor without finding the main wreckage. In 2018, an American deep-sea company, Ocean Infinity, launched another search. Again, nothing definitive. As of today, MH370 remains the greatest unsolved mystery in commercial aviation history. But beyond the technology, the data, the satellite pings, there's something else that must never be forgotten. 239 people were on that plane. Families in China, Malaysia, and around the world waited for answers that never fully came. Parents who lost children, children who lost parents, spouses who are still, legally, in a state of limbo. For many families, especially the large Chinese contingent of passengers, the lack of closure has been devastating. Some have refused to accept the official conclusion. Some continue to search for answers independently. Their grief is a reminder that every aviation mystery is, at its core, a human story. If this video taught you something, give it a like and share it with someone who deserves to know this story. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries and historical events. And drop a comment below. What do you think happened to MH370?